Hey, everybody. We are here to talk about a new comic book called Wicked Town, which is going to be kickstarting very soon by the end of October. I'm here with the co-creators of this book, Francis Stokes. I call him Frank. I'm going to keep calling him Frank. I'm sorry, because that's the way I know him. And Andrea Dailey. And some of you may recall, I'd like to think this, that Frank was on the Fanboy Planet podcast, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
I don't think that much, because 2018, maybe 2018, 2019.
6 years ago. 6 years ago. So I'm bad at math. Everybody knows that. Because you wrote and directed the film Wild Honey,
Right.
which I loved at CineQuest. So, let's put that aside, because now you are turning into a comics writer. So I'm going to go there first. Frank, what inspired you? Because when we talked years ago, I don't really recall we didn't talk a lot about comics. So it didn't seem to me like that was someplace you were going.
I understand. Yeah, no, it's true. I think that was just around the time I was starting to get into them. I read comics growing up, but I wasn't super into the superhero comics. So the stuff that I was reading was more of like the indie stuff and like Cerebus and things like that, and more obscure indie comics in the 80s. And then but comics, as they evolved and into when you get into the last couple decades, I had a friend who was super into comics, a good friend of mine, who said, like, no, you gotta get back into it. You gotta read Brian K. Vaughan, and you gotta read Brubaker Phillips and all this. And that was what really turned me on. I actually went during like in March of 2020, I went to the library to just see what they had in the graphic novel shelf. And they had the whole Saga series and the whole Criminal series. And I just said, well, I'll just grab them all and see how many I can get through before I have to return them in 2 weeks. And then the pandemic hit. And so for 6 months, I had these entire series just sitting in my office. And that was the time, there was nothing else to do, that I really started to go deep into all these comics. And we're both a big fan of Brubaker Phillips. That was sort of a North Star.
You started off extremely well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're some of the best.
And so for me, this new era of comics, discovering all this the sort of non-superhero stuff was what really inspired me and excited me to get into it. Discovering, that kind of sequential panel storytelling, that was where it started.
Yeah, and then the movie that I had seen of yours, Wild Honey, was more of a human drama comedy. I mean, a very warm comedy. I loved that film. And Wicked Town is this. There's this movie that keeps cropping up on my streaming services that I'm suddenly called The Love Witch, that I haven't watched, but I feel like this is a similar. And yet, I know, having seen, Andrea, your work, I'm going to love Wicked Town more. But I haven't watched The Love Witch yet either, but it's this 70s lockdown suburban, but with witchcraft, a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, this was originally a TV pitch that I had for years, where I was basically pitching like the ice storm with witches. That was, my original conception, and it was one of many ideas that when I met Andrea, I kind of threw out there. Basically, once I got into comics like that, and Love Witch is a really cool movie, by the way. Very, very stylish. It really feels like you're watching an old sort of Technicolor 1960s kind of movie. It really feels like it's from that era. I went and to Comic-Con, I guess it was 2 years ago, with the purpose of meeting an artist to collaborate with. And Andrea and I met at one of these events. I think it's called Creator Connection, where it's like a speed dating where they pair up artists and writers. And so I would talk to all these different artists. And with Andrea, we just had an immediate spark.
Well, excellent, because then I'm just going to turn to Andrea, because I think all three of us, well, you and I reconnected, and Andrea met at WonderCon at another. I don't think it was quite the same sort of speed dating.
It was
thing.
Creators Assemble, maybe.
Yes. I think.
Yeah.
Or one of the mixers. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a mixer. It was more of,
yeah.
because I just flail about and say, well, I have some ideas. I don't need to focus. Uh,
No, yeah,
I
and
didn't
you
take
said
my
I
Adderall
was
that day.
Fanboy Planet, and I was like,
Yes, and then we hugged, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But Andrea, you had shown me your work, and I'm gonna just embarrass you now
Oh
by
no.
saying I think you're about to become one of the next great discovered talents,
Wow.
because you showed me those pages. I was just going back over them on your website on Wicked Town, and just with text, with captions now, and just reminding myself, oh yeah, I just absolutely fell in love with your style. So what got you into, because you're a video game concept artist first, and this would be your first comic.
Yes, exactly. What got me into comics? It's kind of embarrassing to say this, but I was just sort of wandering around the con and I was really bored. And I was looking at the schedule and I was like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting, Creator Connect. And I really love talking to creatives. So I wasn't really sure what to expect when I showed up. And when they sort of explained what it was, I was actually more interested because I had really wanted to start a project, but I, like most people, you start something and you never finish it, right? So I wanted to sort of find someone that could keep me going, and I could bounce ideas off of, who was also a professional. So a lot of people I talked to, were like amateur writers, or people who really loved comics and just sort of wanted to make their own comic. And then I met Frank, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've written for like all these things," and I'm just like, "What?" And I've made short films. I'm a film guy, and I come from an animation background. Actually, originally, I went to school at Ringling College of Art and Design for animation, and was going to go into animation, and then ended up going into games. Thank God I did too, because the animation industry is kind of imploding right now, unfortunately. So yeah, like I ended up in video games, and but I still have this love of animation, and so I always felt comics were sort of very close to animation because they're just both sequential art essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Just one's just not moving enough. But yeah, so here I was sitting with Frank, and we just really clicked. And he didn't really have any ideas, which I love, because I think some of the best ideas from just sitting with someone and spouting
Yeah.
up, what if this, and what if she was like this, and oh, what if we did this, and we just like sat there at our first meeting, our first Zoom meeting, and just came up with those ideas. And he was like, hey, what if are you interested in this idea that I was going to pitch as a TV show? And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I love witches. I love this sort of like female centric cast. Like, this is fantastic. And I would love to draw this. So it just sort of exploded from there.
Love
Her
it.
animation background, she called it the cast.
The cast. Well, I mean, but it's true. It's true. And so, who are your influences? Yeah, and first of all, thank you for saying that. Not that animation's imploding, but that video games. Since my son is a video game design major, I'm hoping there's a job waiting for him someday. So, but who influences you as an artist?
Oof, I have so many people, but I'm gonna try to keep it relevant to Wicked Town. So I really love Junji Ito, and I think it's like such a mainstream response, but it wasn't always mainstream. Manga was not always.
No, he's just mainstream now.
Yeah, exactly. So he was a huge influence growing up. I loved his work very much. I also really love Miyazaki. I like his style is very cute, but he's actually himself like a very grim person. So it's
disturbingly like, so. Yes.
Yeah. Hilariously, I think I've seen a lot of memes recently of Junji Ito being like, and I think I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It's like Junji Ito or Junji Ito. But he's like this very happy-go-lucky person who draws the most horrific stuff, and then there's Saki who draws these like gorgeous things, and he's like a very dark person. So it's really funny. But yeah, there were major influences. And then the last one for me would be a lot of the stuff that came out of Rankin Bass. I love animation, so a little bit of animation history here. But a lot of Rankin Bass 2D animations actually came from Japanese studios. They were one of the first American studios to outsource a lot of their animation. And they went to, funny enough, I think it was Tao, I can't say it right, but they ended up being, that did The Last Unicorn, but they ended up becoming Ghibli. So I thought that was really funny because I really love
That's cool.
that movie,
Yeah.
The Last Unicorn. So
Yeah.
a lot of that animation style really influences my art now.
Cool. And so how about the working together? You said, you sat down, you tossed ideas back and forth, but now that we're close, I don't know if you're starting this with a first issue completely done. I think I saw 12 pages.
Right.
That was back then, but it looks like you've got a lot more. So what's the give and take like for you two collaborating?
Yeah, I mean, I'll write the script, and then I'll send it to her, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll usually do like a meeting where she does thumbnails, and it evolves, as she figures out how to, make it, draw it out. And of course, because I come from a film background, I'm sort of already thinking in a storyboard sort of way, but then she's bringing her artistic eye to that, and so it keeps kind of evolving, and then she goes away and turns it into full-fledged drawings, and I'm the letterer, so then it goes back to me again.
Yeah, I go to my little art cave, and I don't.
Yes.
No. I actually kind of wanted to touch on something you said. You said like because it's been a while. I think a couple of people that have met us have been like, "Oh, you guys are still working on Wicked Town, right?" Like, and comics.
Oh, I know it takes time. Yeah.
It does. But comics is a very fast-paced thing, and I don't want people to think that it's going to take 2 years to get issue 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, a little bit sidetracking here, but I actually, funny enough, got jobs from showing people Wicked Town. So I ended up doing comic book jobs. So Frank was like kind of meh at first because he's like, I want to keep working on Wicked Town. But he was also understanding when I was like, hey, I think it would be beneficial for me actually to tell people that I've worked in comics and that I'm a trustworthy person. Like I can actually deliver when I say I'm gonna deliver. And
she colored a full graphic novel.
Yeah. So for Tom DeLonge, I think, is that how you say it? I always say Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
It's not Tom
No,
DeLonge.
yeah.
Tom DeLonge and
for Z Comics.
For Z2, yeah.
Z2 Comics. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And so that was fun. But like now I'm back, right? And I've actually turned down jobs, and I'm like, hey, I'm just working on this now, and I'm very excited to be working on it. Sorry to sidetrack. I just wanted to kind of like go back and be like, hey, by the way, like we are.
No, that's good. I mean, because you're right. You got to be able to show that you can deliver. I feel like Kickstarter is littered with projects that we were promised, and it's a risk. And so I think people are smarter now, or more judicious, and want to make sure, yes, am I going to see this? Is this going to happen? So
and that is really on the creators. I mean, you don't build an audience if you promise things and then don't deliver them.
Right, exactly. But yeah, we want people to know we're delivering. They're going to get issue 1, they're going to get issue 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. It's a 4-part. I guess I should like give the log line just in case anybody coming into this didn't get a sense of it from your intro yet, Derek. But basically, it's set in 1970s suburbia. And a housewife who's feeling bored and sort of trapped in her life of domestic bliss joins a local bridge club and begins to suspect that there's secretly a coven of witches trying to initiate her.
I'm just going to edit that into the beginning of this whole.
Oh, sure.
That's it. And thank you for describing my childhood. Okay, so
please leave that in.
No, my mother could not play bridge, as far as I know. We played a lot of pinochle.
My mom always had these bridge, and I would sneak down the stairs and kind of peek down to see while they were playing bridge. It was when I was little. So yeah, that's where that comes from. And the sort of like log line is like the atmospheric horror of Hereditary meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the relationships of Sailor Moon.
Okay, I'm in. I mean, but I already was, because I know this is quality stuff. So anyway, this is Wicked Town. It'll be on Kickstarter soon, and it's Wicked Town. Wait, I've got it open. Oh no, I have the Kickstarter open. It's wickedtownstudios.com, right?
Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
doing on studios. We're actually gonna start our own little publishing studio, like everybody else and their mom and dad and their whole family, right? Like they all do it. It's just sort of, I think, easier for us to sort of publish under a name. And Wicked
Yeah,
Town is
absolutely.
something that stuck for us. We're like Wicked
Yeah.
Town is like our flagship title, but I think a lot of like I think White Ash kind of did the same thing, right? They had their
Charlie Stickney. Yeah.
and then
Charlie.
I love what
Yeah.
he did. You know, I would love to
fantastic.
follow in his footsteps. Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically, it's what DC did. You
Yeah.
know,
Right, right. Yeah,
Detective
yeah, and the
Comics
image
was
and everything.
DC,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
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 All right. Well, best of luck, and thank you so much for joining this call.
Thank
Yes,
you.
too.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. Be sure to visit the Fanboy Planet website for other features and episodes of the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.